the word inevitability.
According to dictionary.com, unable to be avoided, evaded, or escaped, certain, fated, an inevitable conclusion. Sure to occur, happen, or come. Inevitable. The inevitable end of human life is death.
Did you get that, guys? Inevitability. You know, it's interesting that God has this inevitable idea of what's going to go on, meaning we can't understand what it is. Jessica, Miss Davenport, good day, good day. So what do you think God has in store for us? What are we doing here on this planet? You know, we're supposed to just read this book and run our life by it like it's we're a puppet, like God's pulling our strings. Is that Bible or that Quran or that Torah or that Veda scriptures, or are they just the owner's manual? Or do we have this thing called a free will? And what are we supposed to do with it? One of the things I find, let's see. Welcome to the boot camp. Yep, the sandbox, We're here to ascend step by step, This ain't the final. We aren't going to a finish line, Our life really is not a linear thing, We aren't even our bodies. We're not even our souls. Our body is a avatar that we use to experience. And our soul is a server up there in our Akashic records, right? And what we truly are is spirit in co-creation with love as a work in progress. And what we consider a God is just, middle management, that ineffability, that unknown essence of, the great maker. That's like an interesting thing. That's what interests me. That's what motivates me, My whole life has been one of great experience, right? And I've had great teachers and great loves in my life, and I've had great disappointments, and I never see anything as a failure. I always see it as an opportunity to learn, right? But I have had great loss in my life. I've been around death a great deal. I've died 6 times, In the last 3, I actually had that little experience of the looking at your life, seeing how, the observation of what you did. And it keeps coming back to me that I wasn't finished. And that's why I keep coming back. And I am not, positioning myself in any cul-de-sac or one-way street, or I got to do this, or I'm not happy. No, I am happy by everything, right? And the thing that makes me sad is when I watch humanity limit itself, right, by belief. And I don't believe in anything, but I don't disbelieve anything either, I have faith in love's co-creation, and that's it. So I've seen, the paranormal and the supernatural, right? In the, this last year and a half, I've written 4 novels, right? A series called X-Rated, right? And the first one is Ear Hair. The next one is legend. Next one's legacy. And last one is work in progress. And, they're all interwoven. They all have lots of different characters. They're all metaphors to things. I tell stories of what I've experienced. And I have people in my life. And some of the characters, their names have been changed to protect the stupid. And others were straight up who they are. Because most of the people I name are dead. And so, anyway, nothing is as it seems to be. And don't believe a word I say, And welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei El Bob. And I am your griot, here to tell you a story. And this channel is just to entertain, right? Don't believe a word I say. I don't represent any constituency, any silo, any religion, political standing, you name it, I don't represent it. What does JD say? Go with the flow. You never know where you will go or what you will find. Such as your life, to protect the stupid. The innocent is really who I protect. The stupid, it's not my job. I have 3 rules. Doctor, do no harm. Do not get involved unless you have a workable exit strategy and you go in to protect the innocent, not the stupid, because that's a choice people make. They choose to be stupid, right? Especially if you live. Oh, my mommy was so mean to me. Oh, the gym teacher treated me when I was in 5th grade, and I'm 79 years old, and I'm still thinking about it. No, when I was in 6th grade, we had this gym, right? We had these ropes, and we had rings. We had all these like dangerous things in our gym. I don't know if they'd have them anymore. And the rope, big thick rope like this, and we had to climb up the rope, right? And the top of the gym was 40 feet up in the air. And I was up there, and this was the first time I had a straight up sexual experience. I had the rope between my legs, and I was way up on the ceiling, and I was like, "Ooh, this feels nice. Oh, look at, ooh, this is kind of, yes." And Richard Lasco, the Lasco family, and they were, I don't like to use the word stupid, but I mean that was like, their last name was Lasco, but I think in Lithuania it meant stupid. And every male child, their first name, Richard was, I called him Richard because he was a friend. I hated everybody, everyone called him Richie, right? And he had Richie, Timmy, Bobby, Kenny were his 4 brothers. And it was like Kenny ended up dead. They repaved all the roads in our neighborhood. And our neighborhood was made up of blocks, and so there were a lot of interwoven streets, and they tore up all the old road, and then they kind of put bluestone down and put oil on it, and then they kind of dug up the road and put in new sewers and new water lines and stuff like that. So the road was kind of bluestone oily for at least a couple of weeks. And then they put down the asphalt, and they had these gigantic steamroller, right? And we were like on our bikes, and like you're skidding on the stones and trying to pretend they're motorcycles. And I was the youngest in my family, and my parents never bought me anything new. So the bike I got was my sister's bike. So I had a pink bike, girl's pink bike with pink streamers, right? And Anyway, so we would ride around on our bikes, and I actually like girls' bike. Getting over that bar. I was short kid, so getting over that bar would have been tough for me. So anyway, we were riding around, and um, Kenny, so Kenny and Richie were, in our, my brother hung out with Larry and Bobby, but Kenny and Richie were my age, and so we were riding around on our bikes, and so the big steamroller coming down, and most of us who were smart enough kind of went over and was sitting on the sidewalk when the thing was going, but Kenny kept like going on the Bluestones, and he skidded and went down right in front of the gigantic steamroller coming, and he went down about a foot before the thing started to grab a hold of him, and the guy up there on top didn't see him at all, and the machine was making so much noise you could see Kenny's mouth going, but you couldn't hear him because all you could in the big machine, and it rolled over Kenny slowly. And first it kind of knocked, he slid down, and then the thing rolled on the back tire, and he couldn't get his legs out, and it rolled on to the middle thing, and then it started rolling over Kenny. And he kind of squirted out like a tube of toothpaste. And it was so surreal, and we were just like 20 feet away from it. And we got this, the view this way and kind of sideways. So we couldn't hear him scream, but we watched him get splatted. And when the thing rolled over him, he was just an ink blot. The only things that came up out of the asphalt were his sneakers, but his body, his bones, the bike. And I was, I was probably 8 when I saw that. That was the first really, whoa. And then that summer, my brother had a tree fort, and the way the block was, there was this kind of space behind all the houses that was no man's land. There was a big tree behind our garage, and it's no man's land. And my brother and his buddies built a tree fort up there, really nice tree fort. And they came down the side of the tree, and then they went, and then they had a ladder go over a picket fence, right, to go into McGrath's backyard. And Bobby was coming over, and he lost his balance, and he fell on the picket fence, and he got 3 pickets straight across his chest, right, went straight into him, into his organs, and and you could hear him scream, the whole neighborhood. And when the fire department and the ambulance showed up, instead of them picking him off the picket fence, they cut the pickets and brought him to the hospital with pickets in him so he wouldn't bleed out. And that was one summer. When I was 8 years old, those 2 events were like, whoa. And it gave me this insight on life, that it's not to be wasted, not to be stupid, not to be stupid. So that's where I kind of wrote off saving the stupid people. And so, I guess a year and a half later in 6th grade, when I was around 10 or maybe 9.5 or something, 10, I'm up there on this rope, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, yeah, ooh, yeah, ooh, this is kind of fun, And we had learned biology in 6th grade, so we knew about the birds and the bees. So I kind of knew what that feeling was supposed to be. And Jimmy, Richard Lasco, Richie, he came over and he grabbed the rope and said, "Get up the rope, I want to go up." And he went like zing and sent a big wave up the rope. And I'm like 40 feet up in the air, like this chain. I was like way on the top up there, and it popped me off, and I flew off, and everything slowed down, and I just kind of tumbled, and tumbled, and tumbled, and tumbled, and tumbled and tumbled. And I could see everyone's face in the gym, and they were all like in horror. Whereas when we saw Kenny get rolled over by the steamroller and Bobby fall on the picket fence, we were more like, hmm. And so, because I wasn't a stupid kid, I was at the behest of that stupid kid, and so I'm flying over and I'm coming down and I'm going so slow in my head, probably took 2 seconds, or maybe a second, but I thought it was a minute and a half. And as I was coming around and the ground was coming up, I put my leg out and I stepped on the gym floor and my leg snapped. And I still have that scar. I don't know if you can see it, but it was, you see my leg? It was like right down there. And I had a compound fracture. So my leg was like this. My foot was like, oh, whoa, hey. I kind of did that. My foot was like over here, and my rest of my leg was going that way. And everyone was throwing up and running away, and no one came over to help me. Except Richie. He kind of looked, he was mesmerized because the bone was sticking out of my leg. And he went over and goes, wow, that's cool, man. Wow. And he just touched the spiky part of that bone, and it put me into shock like that. And I was unconscious, which was a great thing because I woke up about a day later in a hospital, and I had a cast from my foot all the way up to my hip. And the nurse came in, oh, you're awake. And she goes, you are one lucky kid. I said, what do you mean I'm a lucky kid? She goes, well, you could have landed on your head. You could have landed on your back. You could have be crippled and, but you just had a compound fracture from falling like 40 feet. She goes, it was like a miracle. And she goes, the other miracle was that kid touched the bone and put you into shock. So you didn't feel any pain, right? You didn't go through when the guys showed up in the ambulances and they were fucking with you. You didn't feel any of that. And then the other amazing lucky thing was when they brought you to the hospital, there were 3 hospitals they could have taken me to, but they took me to a hospital that a doctor who had just invented a new procedure, because when you have a thing like that, they put it together and then put screws and bars and all kinds of things in your legs, which normally screws you up worse than the break you have. And she said your compound fracture was in such a way that those 2 parts, when they put in, they perfectly fit. And this guy, new procedure, he had this material that slid on the bone, and then once he put it together, he slid it over where it was broke, and they added some it was like making a fiberglass, surfboard around the break. And it was made of a material that over a 6-month period, the enzymes in my body would break down and that material would just dissolve, right? And so she said, well, you're going to have to be in this cast for 6 months, but after that break should be as good as new, and because this was, and he was here demonstrating, giving a lecture on this technique, and then you showed up and he said, oh, look, I can actually show you how this thing works. And so they operated on you and did that. And so, 6 months later, that break was stronger than any of the other bones. I've broken other bones, and I never broke that again. And having these kind of experiences, you could say, I was a really sickly kid. I mean, for the first 10 years of my life, I got pneumonia every time because I died when I was born, right? And when I was 10, my parents took my dad, they got a house in Florida, and in Pompano Beach, right on the beach, right on US 1A. And we were there for, I think it was Easter break, right? And it was like snowing in New York. We left New York in woolen coats, and we got, into the Palm Beach airport. and it was like 80 degrees, and we're all wearing wool. And my dad, being the cheap guy he got a Pinto. He had 6 kids, and he had a Pinto. And my mom packed enough bags for a year and a half for everybody. And so it was like, and my father was so hot, he put the keys of the car into his pocket, folded it neatly, put it in the trunk, and closed the keys in the car. And and it was Easter weekend, so nobody was there to get the keys out. So this one guy knew about Pintos, and he took the back seat out, and my parents shoved me into the trunk to get the keys out of the jacket. And being on that airplane, and we were back in steerage, and everyone was sick and coughing, and then I got stuck in this, and I got the keys out, but then I got stuck in the trunk, and I was like, it was like 190 degrees in the trunk, and it took them about 10-15 minutes to get me out of there. And I was like totally, I vomited, I had heat thingamajig, and I was exposed to all those people who were sick on the airplane. So 2 days later, I had pneumonia, strep throat, chicken pox, and I was in the hospital, right? And this is about, maybe a year after I broke my leg. And so, I still limped. I still kind of walked with a cane. And so I was in the hospital. It was Easter, and I was in a Catholic hospital, and this nun who looked like the flying nun, right? She had this habit, and she looked like a penguin, and they had this big color TV set, the big round ones where the picture kind of blurred on the edge, and they were showing Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy was being taken away by the winged Winkies, and this nun like stuck her face like this with this big thing, and looked, and I said, "Oh my God, it's the winged Winkies!" And I, with my, being, out of my mind with a fever and in shock, I just went, boom, right? And I saw her fly over me, and then I went unconscious. And then a day or two later, I woke up, and I was chained to the bed, and I had a helmet on, so I couldn't, one of those things so you can't, Hannibal Lecter helmets, right? And 4 years earlier, I was still wearing a helmet from a nun that kind of murdered me, and and so there I was lying in my own excrement and my own urine, and then they had not taken care of me, and my parents, nobody in my family's around. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't push a button. I was like, chained to the bed, legs and arms. And I said to myself, that's it. I am never getting sick again. And I never got sick again after that. I mean, I was always sick up until then. And so, in that first early 10 years, I had some serious traumas. And I did never go, oh, my life is so tough. I mean, when she crushed the Nazi nun in first grade, crushed my esophagus, broke my orbit of my eye, and damaged this ear, right? And kind of really mushed my head. And, I couldn't speak for a year and a half. And then after I spoke, and still you can hear in my voice that I don't pronounce things like a lot of people. Certain vowels and consonants I just doesn't work because of my esophagus and my jaw and my other things. And I never ever go, oh, I'm so don't blame that. It's everyone else's fault. It's your fault. Your fault. My life sucks. It's your fault. Your fault. No, I went the other way. I said, I almost, I've died like 4 times before I was 10. And I said, no, man, I am going to enjoy my life. And I had this great grandma who really, gave me some really good pointers, like never ask for permission. It's a lot easier to say you're sorry, right? And, never work for anyone who doesn't need me more than I need them. Always, you know, basically, she, showed me that lying, cheating, and stealing were worthless. There is no upside to lying, cheating, and stealing. If you lie, cheat, and steal, you always are looking like, for people coming up from behind. You always have to think about what you had to say, blah, blah, blah. I've always had a blessed life because I always thought of the other person. My grandma really, and the neighborhood that I grew up in Harlem, it was all the we. There was no, you know, I'm special, I'm entitled, I'm more important than anybody else. No, no. I realized that life wasn't fun unless you could share it with other people. It was much more fun to see people happy than to have some illusion of your life being better than someone else's, that you're a star or you're an A-lister or you're handsome. Or I never thought about my looks, And girls used to say I was cute and handsome, and I looked in the mirror and I said, I don't know. I never thought about that. Never thought about having to dye my hair or to exercise to the point where, no. And I was a little peanut of a kid until I was about 11. Between 11 and 14, I grew about a foot. Let's see. MJ says, tell Bob. So sorry you punched the nun. I wasn't really. After that, first nun in first grade tried, basically murdered me. And, but not being able to see, and this eye was changed. So I can see auras and other energy spectrums with this eye that most people can't see. Now, my depth perception and like when I'm reading something or looking at something, I have to read with one eye or the other eye. It's if I do them both, it instead of having you have two sides of your brain and one eye goes to one side. I actually see that when I look through both of my eyes, right? Which gives me this very interesting perspective when I'm looking at the world out there, right? And I see that it's not what it seems to be. That's what I really see. And, it's not that I see ghosts, it's that I see energy and electricity. I stuck a knife in an electric socket when I was about 6 years old. And I was like, just going, oh, yeah, this is fun. Because I wasn't really grounded. I was a little infant, I wasn't touching any ground. But my sister ratted me out, Mommy, I'll be Pluggy Boom Boom. And that was my nickname. I was a little kid, because I kept playing with the appliances, and my mom would put bread in the toaster and it would catch fire, and because I'd take it apart and put it back together and have I wonder where these things go in, just so my grandma just kind of because there were six of us, and my mom and both my parents, they were not, they weren't terrible parents. They weren't like beat us up or tormented it, but they weren't really parents that were, I just lived to have children. They were Catholics, so they had sex and they had kids, right? And so my grandma was the youngest one, and I'm taking this one. And she took me to her apartment, and she had an apartment in New York City, in Harlem, and this really kind of nice house in Long Island, because my grandpa had two shops, one in what was the name of that hotel? Really fancy hotel. Waldorf. Yeah, he had the barbershop in Waldorf. And he every day the first guy he gave a barber, clipping to was J.P. Morgan. And New York City was, vaudeville and Broadway, and it was Long Island was where they first made the first movies, before they moved out to California. And so all of that acting talent and directors and stuff had houses in the Hamptons and in a place called Freeport, right? And it's on the South Shore. And so my grandpa had two barbershops, and it serviced like the really rich people like J.P. Morgan and the, actor Hollywood vaudeville stars who had their nice houses on the Atlantic. And Freeport was a port. There was two ports on Long Island, Glen Cove and Freeport. And Freeport was like the one that the pirates used, and all the way up to through Prohibition, because it was a big long port into thing, and then there were all these kind of tributaries, because it was called the Great South Bay. So it was kind of like Venice, and so it was a really interesting place when I was a kid. All this stuff, and my grandma, we would walk everywhere, and they had trolley cars, And so we would take you could take the Long Island Railroad, which cost about 50 cents to go from Freeport into New York City. And that would get you in there, if we took the express, in about, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And take the trolley, it cost a nickel. And it went all the way from Islip, all the way on Sunrise Highway, all the way into Brooklyn, Queens, Brooklyn. And it would stop right at this place near Long Island City where all the trains and subways came together. Anyway, and that would take you about an hour, because it just kind of chugged along on the road and picked people. It's like a bus, but it was on rails, trolley. And America had those all over the place. In every large city, they had them. And they got it, after World War II, the oil companies, the tire companies, and the car companies bought up all the trolleys and ripped them out of the ground, so everyone would have to, have a car. And Mr. Moses, built all the highways, and they were racist highways, because he would take them, not just races, but they were class, because like the BQE is a good example. It comes in, goes from Brooklyn to Queens, or Queens to Brooklyn, into Manhattan, down along, and then out into New Jersey. And it's like a snake. It doesn't go on a straight line. It does this because he took it through all these neighborhoods and cut these neighborhoods in, just like the black neighborhood, the Hispanic neighborhood, and then along 2nd Avenue, where all the white European Euro trash were, like 2nd Avenue from about 34th Street up to 125th Street. Every 3 blocks was Lithuanian, Polish, and not just Lithuanian, but all the different types of Lithuanians, all the different types of Poles, all the different types of Italians, all the different types of, So that was New York. That was in New York I grew up in. And my grandma was my avenging angel, a person who watched out for me all the time. I went to a Catholic school. I am laughing at the fact that you punched her. There were several that I experienced that should have been punched. Yeah. But, so I was a little gun shy because this one nun nearly killed me. And it took me a year and a half to, the crushing of my esophagus, I still have issues, like the breath. So that's what made me a good actor. So I really had to learn how to project my breath for people, because when I talked, I used to talk, and I used to stutter, and after a year of that, once I was basically better, once they took the helmet off of me and they unwired my jaw, and everything kind of went back to, at least somewhat of a homeostasis, I didn't talk at all. And one of the greatest things about being murdered by that nun was that I learned to listen, because that's all I could do. And this ear didn't work that well. So I have this amazing echolocation, because this one is sharper. It's like, I can hear people talk, 50 feet away. and they're just talking. I can hear them, right? This year, it's like echo. I hear echoes, right? And so I can tell how far people away, what direction they're coming from, um, and it picks other frequencies up, right? So, um, it was a miracle, that I didn't die, but the other part of it was it changed me from being just a usual mud puppet into this kind of changeling, something out of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, and I didn't have wings, but everything else I kind of had, and so when that second nun, and I was hallucinating. I had a fever of 106, and I was hallucinating, and the Wing and Winkies were taking Dorothy away, and this nun stuck her face right in front of me, and in my adrenaline, bango, you know, and I really must have hit that nun hard because my hands were like handcuffed behind me, but my hand and my arm was in a cast. So if I hit that nun so hard that it broke my hand, then I really must have hit that nun. And she flew over me, and I heard her crashing over there, and then I was out. And so I've been in car crashes, and I've been shot, and fallen. I was working on a construction site. I was up on a scaffolding about 30 feet off the ground, and it was in this commercial building that we were turning into condos, and the upstairs were turning into a big fancy kind of restaurant. And so it was, the top ceiling was 30 feet high. They had these gigantic windows, right? And they had taken all the windows out because they were going to put way nicer windows in there, because they had these like windows that were small but had a great view, and so they wanted to put gigantic glass there. Anyway, so I'm up on a scaffolding, and I am running conduit on the ceiling, and this moron with a forklift, basically is moving big pallets of concrete and cinder blocks, and he moves. He just kind of does this with a pallet of cinder blocks and the forklift, and he smashes it into the scaffolding, and the scaffolding goes over like this, and I'm on top, and I go through the air, and because they've taken out the windows, I fly right through the window, and I'm tumbling down, and every time I fall a great distance, I tumble. I don't just like wee, and I'm tumbling down, and as I'm going around, I can see that all the people have gotten up to the window to watch me fall the 6 stories, right? And as I turn around and I see the ground, I see 2 dumpsters. One that's full of broken up cinder blocks, and another one that is full of black garbage bags with fiberglass insulation, right? And I'm going down, and I'm like heading right, and so there are these 2 big, 60-yard dumpsters that are about 6 feet high and about 20 feet long, and they're right next to each other. And there's like and so there's right here is the 2 metal walls, and I'm like heading for that. So if I hit the metal walls, that's going to be the end of me. If I go into the dumpster full of cinder blocks, that's the end of me. If I hit the ground and don't hit, the dumpsters, that's the end of me. But if I fall into the dumpster that's filled to the top with plastic garbage bags full of, fiberglass insulation, yeah, I might survive that, And so I'm actually trying to swim through the air over to the dumpster with the fiberglass, and I make it bang right in the middle of that, and all the bags kind of go poof, and I come out just scratching up like a storm. And so I've had a brush with death a lot, right? And so that has given me the appreciation of death and the understanding that I've accepted death. And now, when I died in a plate of spaghetti at 63, And it took, and I woke up on a gurney where they were rolling me into an operating room to crack my chest and do a quad, quadruple bypass and cut my legs off because I had serious diabetes. I had serious heart disease. I was clogged up because I'd been eating, 30,000 calorie a day for 10 years. I gained 200 pounds. I was living the super duper hedonist life. Have any of you seen the movie by Monty Python called The Meaning to Life? And they went through all of, sex and lust and greed and gluttony. And they had this character named Mr. Creosote in a really fancy schmancy super duper rich people's restaurant. And he's just eating all these super, turkeys with ducks in it, with chickens in them, and those are kind of meals I ate for 10 years straight. I gained 200 pounds. And that's why I ended up in the plate of spaghetti and heading towards the operating room. And they already had knocked me out. They already had, the IV in my arm, and they were like putting fentanyl in me, and I was gone. I was, because that drug, fentanyl, was designed to knock you out. So when they open you up, they don't want you jumping up going, what's going on? When they're doing open heart surgery. Anyway, so they're rolling me in there, and I'm on a gurney, and they're taking me down the hallway from the ICU into the operating room. And there is the doctor who is the drug doctor, his nurse, another nurse, and 2 orderlies. It was like 5 people rolling me down the thing. And I just shot up like chatty Cathy. Wait, where am I? What's going on? And one of those guys crapped his pants. He was so scared. A nurse ran the other way. The doctor kind of said, I can't believe this. You can't be awake. You have so much fentanyl in you, you should be like totally gone. I mean, we're just about to cut you open. I said, cut me open? Oh, yeah, we're going to do quadruple bypass and chop your legs off, because my legs were black with red racing stripes. And I said, no. I didn't sign anything. I gave no money consent to do this to me. Well, the guy over there, your lawyer. I said, he's not my lawyer. He's my client. And he wants me to do something. You probably told him that, if you let me get operated on, I'll be able to do what he wants me to do and negotiate this contract in like 2 weeks. Well, when you get open heart surgery and they chop your legs off, you're not doing anything in 2 weeks, like in 2 years, maybe, if you're even alive. I worked in hospitals. I worked in medicine. I knew the statistics, that you don't want them to chop your legs. You don't want anyone to cut you up unless, no one's touching my legs unless my leg was blown off and it's like down the street and they're going to sew it back on. No, unless it's really real, I'm not doing it. So I had him roll me back. And then I had that lawyer, I said, take me down to your house on the Keys. I need a colonic. I need a nutritionist. I need this, acupuncture, massage. And if you get those people and they get the crap out of me, I will physically be able to do what you want me to do in the next 2 weeks. Go to the judge, get a contingency, and we'll take it from there. But if you have me operated on, I'll be dead, and you'll lose $2 million. So he did. He sent me down there. I got a colonic every day. They just kind of sucked all that crap out of my colon, and I changed my diet. I got acupuncture. I got a lot of things, and it got me to the point where I could do that. Then he was righteous enough, because I made him like $2 million, to send me back down to his house and keep those people working on me until, by the time spring came, I was in pretty good, not really great shape, but better shape. And I went back to the school, and it took me 4 years of, really being, I lost 200 pounds, I mean, I took 6 years to lose 240 pounds, but I lost 60 pounds in the first 8 months, right? And that changed my metabolism, and I was going in the right direction, and my legs, everything But I had like metal braces on my legs. I was walking with a walker. Now I don't, and that all came from conscious intent. What it was I had gone off the path, right? So dying, going through that, challenge, and building myself back up to, and still, like so. Last 2 weeks, I went and saw all my fancy doctors here in Virginia, and I still have all those things wrong with me, but I'm in balance. I'm in homeostasis, right? I mean, I have this thing called Shako legs, meaning my legs, where my ankle meets my foot, that is all mush. The bones aren't, you look at the x-rays and it's mush. It looks like oatmeal, but I'm walking on my legs, and my podiatrist and my bone doctor are like, I don't know how you do this. And my endocrinologist, he doesn't understand. I mean, a number of my organs were severely damaged, but they're working relatively well, And I used to have pretty high blood pressure, and I can't, the statins really make me constipated. So I sometimes I ran out of them too, and I didn't have the money to buy them for about 2 months, and so my blood pressure was about 120, over 60, which is, it's a little elevated, but it's not like 200 or 180 or 150, So by being very conscious of my diet and exercise all the time, but I don't have to do 10,000 sit-ups or push-ups, or I'm not looking to, look like Batman or anything. I'm just staying alive because I'm here to serve love's co-creation. I'm not here to do anything other than to be my better self, right? I move forward in that. So we started out with this concept of God's inevitable, idea of what's going on, and we have no idea of that. But lots of people believe in, the King James Bible, the New Testament, that, Armageddon's coming. Someone asked Jesus how long the world's going to last. And he had no idea, because this is a work in progress. And humans have a free will. Nothing is written in stone. Meaning, if we have Armageddon, it's only because, as our good friend JD said, stupid people, And it just amazes me, the level of stupidity. And it's not like we're any more stupid that we are today than we were yesterday, but it just amazes me how people get played all the time, politically. I mean, we go to wars, and there is no reason. There was, the Revolutionary War. It was rich white men who owned property that precipitated, not the rest of the, more than half of the Americans were happy with King George being and French and Indian War. That was, again, about rich white people taking Indians' property. Then you had a number, War of 1812, the Civil War, a number of, lots of other small things in there. The war in Mexico, before the Civil War, where we took California and Texas, and the first thing we did, wasn't about, the Mexicans shooting the guys in, Texas. No, we sent our army right into Mexico, right to Mexico City, All the guys who fought in the Civil War were wearing blue uniforms and invaded Mexico. And Texas was part of Mexico, right? California was part of Mexico. New Mexico was part of Mexico. And all of these wars these were not wars of defense. They were wars of aggression. But the American people went along with it and died, and it cost them money, and they lost, with every war, we lost more and more freedoms. And Civil War was about a means of production. It wasn't even about state rights. It wasn't about slavery. But slavery was something that we had, and it was an outgrowth of what we tried to turn the Indians into slaves, but they fought back, and also they died. They were susceptible to our European germs. And I mean, there were something on the order of 100 million indigenous people in North America and Central America and South America. And we wiped 100 million of them out in 400 years, And, no one wants to hear about that. I mean, people, don't want to celebrate Columbus Day because he was a sociopathic murderer, and pretty much it's a historical fact. I mean, he landed in Haiti where there were 6 million indigenous people, and in 8 years he wiped them out, you know. And I mean, just story after story after story, and the only hardworking people left in America are the Hispanic folk. I mean, every Hispanic neighbor I ever had was the best neighbor I ever had. Hardworking family person, lots of fun, would give you the shirt off the back, and we treat them like crap, you know. And we will become a xenophobic country, and even though we are a super, um, you know, diversified, we have so many different cultural groups in America. I mean, we're a country of immigrants. And if you go watch the movie Gangs of New York, you get a good idea of what our xenophobia is really like. How the different folks who were immigrants were played against each other, and it was always the rich guy doing the playing, you know. And so I do this show to tell you stories, to give you a point of reference, right? That normally isn't out there. Now, I'm at my friend's house and they have good internet, and so they have a couple of platforms. They have Netflix and Amazon, and there are all these shows. This what's the show? Oh, what's it called? Uh, what is it when you have a really amazing world? George Jetson world. Um, and and there's that word, and then there's the opposite of it. Let's see, where's the controller? It's hard when you're blind; you can't see, especially when there's no light. And here's the controller. Let's see. Um, so the show. There's a show that was about the angel and the devil, and Prime. Let's see these shows that I've been watching. So there's a show. Let's see what it's called. So The Expanse is an interesting show. Hannah is an interesting show. Um, I mean, they all are kind of push the envelope. Hannah, Philip K. Dick, that's an interesting show. Mandela Effect. The Feed. Feed is where, everyone's online in their head. And, their brains are basically getting hacked. Monsters of Man is kind of showing what AI. It's like the Terminator, but more like what's going on. Five Galaxies. enhanced. So there are a lot of shows about your body, your body being enhanced, and robots, and Wheel of Time, um, Underground Railroad. That was pretty interesting. Um, Tomorrow War, Miami. That was a good show, good movie. And so what I'm saying is that these platforms are the new gestalt for the aesthetic of, Justice League, Escape, Operator, Perfect Weapon, Recall. What happened to? Hannah's about this girl who gets, trained to be a super assassin. And so anyway, I've been binge watching all of this. And, that's why I don't have a TV or cable or satellite or anything, because, I can get a little addicted to television. And I can't believe that it's not showing me the things I watched most recently. Let's see what this is. I wish I could think of the word of, it's like the perfect world, and then there's the non-perfect world. Utopia. Thank you, MJ. Better than me looking at the screen. Utopia. So that show was pretty amazing with Mr. Rabbit, and it had great mythology. It had great characters, great story. And it talked about, was I think produced, probably it was in works in 2018 and 19, but it's about this large corporation that basically fosters a pandemic on the world, and what it's trying to do is the corporation A is making a fortune out of it selling the vaccine, and B, it's basically causing everyone to be infertile. Because we're not doing. It's pretty obvious that if we don't really get serious about what kind of life we lead, we're not going to be here in 50 years. Or if we are still here, we will not want to be. And part of it is that Albert Pike, around 1776 in France, basically started the Illuminati, and it was just a political crew, and but it was very esoteric and occult. And what is esoteric and occult? It's simply a word. Esoteric means hidden knowledge, and occult is like deep hidden knowledge, like even deeper than just human experience. It goes into the paranormal. And what is paranormal? But it's this normal that's parallel to us, right? And that's kind of what ghosts are. They're just in another state. They're energetic, And there's been a great deal of research. In 1968, when I was just on the BOP, I was first in, I went down to visit some friends in Chapel Hill. When I left college, I went down to my buddies who were in Chapel Hill and Duke, and then my really good friend, who was a newspaper photographer, and then his boss died, so they made him the photo editor. And then he got, I was hanging out with him, and he said, "Hey, do you want to be a newspaper photojournalist?" And I was like 18, 19. I said, "Sure, yeah, that sounds fun." And it was like being Batman. And so I did that. And I did that for about 8 months in High Point. I was a photographer for High Point Enterprise. And it was really interesting because the police there, they had no CSI, so but they had a lot of murders, and so the newspaper, the photojournalists would go and take pictures for the police department. So when I got there, the first week I was there, I was staying at my friend's apartment, sleeping on his couch. He said, "Oh, here's the keys. I'm gonna go on a date, but you take the we had this black LTD. It was a black black police car, but the newspaper owned it. It had police radio in it and a scanner, and so he said, "You go to this address." And look for Sarge, blah blah blah, and there's been a murder, and they want you to take pictures of it. So I went down there, and and it was hot. It was summer. I had shorts and flip flops and string T-shirt and a baseball cap, and I showed up, and there's this cop, and I get out of I pull up, and I pull next to they have like the place cordoned off, and it's a police car, but it's painted black, and it still has the two lights on the side doors that police cars have, and it still had the bar where the police lights are, but they took the lights off, as very obviously a police car that no longer was being used as a police car. Anyway, so I pull up and I get out, and I'm like in shorts and flip flops and a string T-shirt and baseball cap, and the Sarge there looks at me. I said, "I'm looking for Sarge, blah blah blah," and he goes, "Oh, that's me." And he goes, "So you're the new guy?" And I said, "Yeah, that's right, sir." And he goes, "Well, we need to take pictures, but before you do that, I want you to go to my police car. Here's my keys. Open up the trunk, and you will find some waiters in the trunk." Well, the only waiters I knew were guys with trays and brought you dinner, right? So I kind of go, huh? And so I open it up, and there's all kinds of police stuff in there, but there's a box of these, and it says fishing waiters, and they were these kind of pants you pull up that have rubber boots and pants and everything, and it's like bib overalls, and so you can walk into water and not get wet, right? Waiters, right? Who knew? So just put those on. So I put them on. I take my flip-flops off. I put them on, and he walks me in there. And he's at the door, and what this was a little house, and there were these four brothers, and they were playing cards, and they all had shotguns, and they were really drunk and really stoned, and I think maybe doing acid, and for some reason they all decided to start shooting at each other with shotguns, 12-gauge shotguns, that were, and they were in a room that was maybe 12 by 10, and there was nowhere for them to go, right? They were at a card table, they were, folding chairs, but no other real furniture. There was no place for them to really go. And so they blew each other apart. So their arms over here and heads over there. And I mean, this was like a war zone, four guys just blown apart by 12-gauge shotguns. And I kind of go in there, and I've already seen by this time a good deal of blood and guts, and so I start. I got my Nikon, and I'm like taking the pictures like I was Ouija, the New York City, crime photographer for the New York Post in the 1940s and 50s, and the guy goes, no. These need to be used in court cases, so you can't do that. Let me show you how to do it. So he goes, okay, first of all, we have these box of numbers, right? So so this body here, right? That'll be the first thing you take a picture of. So there's like 10 ones. So you put the one, so where his leg is over here, you put a one over there, where his head's over there, and so that all of those pictures that have ones in them are connected to that body, right? Even though it's in blown apart parts, we'll know, right? And you put them this way and that way, and then you shoot it this way, straight down, and this way, right? And so I go, okay, click, 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 and I do that to all the bodies, and and he goes, come on, now, put your cameras back in your, in your bag, and put your stuff over there, and come out in the back, and I'm going to hose you down, because I was just covered in blood. And I don't know why, but the waders he had were made out of white rubber, So, and the blood, it was blood everywhere, and it was so slick. It was slick like snot, and so it, and there was. He said, "I want spider pattern here," and so I took that, and then he hosed me off, and I took the waders off, put it back in the box, put my flip flops on, and he goes, "Kid, you did a really good job." I said, "Well, thank you, officer." He goes, "Well, Sergeant Bob, just call me Sarge." Okay, thanks, Sarge. He goes, "Do you like pie?" I go, "Yeah, if you want some coffee and pie." And it was like, by this time, it was about, 1 a.m. And I said, "Yeah, that sounds fun." So he takes me over to the pink teacup in the black section of High Point, North Carolina. And it is this, black, amazing restaurant, a black food, African food, really amazing food, really great pies. She had every kind of pie you could make, and she had ice cream they made that was really amazing, right? So they had coffee ice cream, vanilla ice cream, chocolate ice cream. There's those three flavors. And a berried, either strawberry or blueberry or some fruit ice cream, whatever fruits she had. And so we had big chunks of pie and coffee, and he was telling me stories. And he said, "Kid, you're going to do all right, right?" So I was either the new guy or the kid between the police department and the city government. And majority of the pictures I took were pictures of situations like the mayor cutting a ribbon or, nothing. I mean, and every now and then we'd shoot a crime scene. And pretty much after I did that one, and I developed the pictures and I printed them right away and got them to Sarge, he basically would say, "Hey, I want the new guy. I want the kid." And so I became very adroit at taking pictures of dead bodies. And then the first big picture I took was of a hanging in Gainesboro. No, it's a town in North Carolina, starts with a G. It'll pop into my head. But anyway, and they hanged this guy who did nothing. And some lady said, "Oh, he looked at me the wrong way," and they hung him. And they beat the ever living crap out of him, and he had no hearing, no court, no jury of his own peers. They just beat the crap out of him. Big crowd. They marched him out and hung him on the old hanging tree, right? And I shot it with a large format camera. The thing that you put the hood over you, and the film is 10-inch by 10-inch. And I stopped it all the way down because I locked it in because I knew a bunch of stuff would be going on, and I didn't want to be trying to focus it. So I super depth of field. I had a real serious strobes, and it was daytime. And so I took 10 shots. Him coming out the door, he was in his underpants, and he had black and blue all over his body. His eyes were black. His nose was still bleeding. His mouth, half his teeth were gone. I mean, they seriously beat the crap out of this guy. And they dragged him over to the tree. They put the noose around his neck and threw it, over the hanging tree limb and tied it to the back of a truck and just, pulled him up into the air. And he was like wiggling around. And I had a Nikon too, and I took close-ups with my Nikon, but that large format camera, I took the whole crowd from the front door of the courthouse across this kind of green and park benches and then a big avenue and then the tree. And so I had that whole thing, and and it was a 10-inch negative. So when I printed it, I could zoom in on different parts, but everything in that 10 inches was crystal, razor sharp focus. And because I had these two gigantic zillion candle power Nazi strobes, so it was a sunny day, but the strobes made different sides of people's face really stand out, and be some people had some serious hard shadows. I mean, really freaking amazing photos. And so when I got there, they didn't send a reporter with me. So my editors, the major editor, not the owner editor or the editor in chief, but the newsroom editor guy said, so this is what you need to do. I want you to go there. The hang is going to be around 4:00. I want you to get there by 10 in the morning. Go see the sheriff. Figure out where you want to set your camera up. And he wanted me to use this large format camera. I said, okay. He said, you know how to use one? I said, oh, yeah. And so I went to see the chief of police, and I had a letter from my editor, and I had my press pass, and I had also a letter from the chief of police in High Point, because I was taking police photos a lot, and so I said, what am I? He said, oh, you're one of us. Okay, great. So I said, I'm going to set up my camera here. And he goes, that's no problem. And I said, can I set it up and just leave it here until the action starts? Yep, no one will touch it, So I set that camera up. I have all the equipment there. I have a little umbrella, to keep the sun off it. And then I get my Nikon and I start walking around the 3 blocks around the city center. Greenville, is that where? Greenville, North Carolina? I think that might have been it. And it was not that far from Fayetteville. So anyway, I kind of walk around, and it's all white people, and it's like a holiday spirit, right? Everyone's kind of, woo, we have a hanging. And I talked to people, and basically the white people had no idea really what happened. We're going to hang an end guy, right? And an uppity end guy. And so I said, did he, were you at the hearing? Oh, there were no hearing, no jury of his own peers. Oh, no. And so then I noticed the black folk were like street or so down, kind of behind buildings, like looking at it. So I kind of would go over there and talk to them and say, hey, what's going on? And they said, who are you? And I would say, well, I'm from High Point. I'm a reporter. And I just want to know what's going on. I don't, I'm not from these parts, and what's going on. And so, I would talk and talk and talk to them and listen to them. And they, after about half an hour, they would realize, well, this guy's not going to get us in trouble. And so I, would interview them, and I wouldn't be there like writing. I kind of would talk to 3 or 4 people, listen to them. And then after being with them, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, I said, can I take a few pictures of you? And they would say, okay. And I said, they're kind of, I want to do like a portrait photo of you, and I'm going to wherever you want to stand and however you want to look, and just going to, I said, okay. So I want to get a feeling of how you feel and what the feel of what this day is like and for you. And so I did that. And then, I went around and talked maybe to 10 different groups. I went into a couple of, Greasy Spoons and talked to people there, and a couple of stores and talked to people there. And then it got close to about 3:00. I went back to my large format camera, made sure everything was cool, got ready to do it. And the crowd started to come in, and I kind of walked around with my Nikon, and I had a great 22 to 75 millimeter zoom. It was a great piece of glass. It really was a great lens. And so I could do portrait lenses. I could do wide angles. I could do almost, fisheye, 22 millimeters, a pretty wide angle. So I was snapping a lot of that. And then the crowd got pretty big. So I went back to my large format and made sure, I had some orange cones the cops gave me. So I put them out in front of me so no one would stand in front. And my camera's on a little bit of a knoll of grass. So I was kind of above the crowd by about a foot. And my camera was on a tripod. And I had locked it all in. So everything was depth of field. And as soon as the guy came out the door in his underpants, I did not think he was coming out in his underpants, but he was hit. Nothing, bare feet, underpants, and black and blue everywhere. He's a black guy. He's black and blue. It's like unbelievable. And I just, click, him being dragged out the front door. coming down the steps. People were hitting him and throwing stuff at him, and the cops did nothing to stop it. It was like Jesus coming, with the cross. And he walks across the avenue, and people are hitting him and trying to hit him with sticks, and the cops don't do anything. And I get about 5 of those shots, and then I get 2 of the shots of the guys like tying his hands behind his back and his legs so he couldn't run, and putting this big noose around his neck and tying it onto a car. I get about 2 or 3 shots of that. And then I get 5 shots of the truck moving and, getting him about 3 feet off the ground, and his body wiggling around. And so I'm just like a gag. I'm just like, I'm doing my job, taking a picture, but I'm just totally, and the sheriff is kind of, once, he came over and stood by me before the guy came out, right? And because I was in a place where everyone could, so he was like standing there so everyone could see he was there. And I was, and a couple of the pictures I said, can you just take a step forward? So I had him, his whole side and his like stars and, on the side of the frame, and the guy hanging up in the air, right? So, when the guy, when it was brought out, actually when they cut him down, I was like, I was so aghast. I turned to the sheriff because I thought I had made a somewhat of a connection with the sheriff. And I said to him, I said, what did this guy do? And he looked at me and said, boy, you need to leave town now. Pack your stuff up and go. Be out before sundown. And it was like, it was late summer, and it was probably 5:30 when he said that to me. So I did. I kind of packed my stuff up and, started to get out of town. And this one black guy, basically, who I talked to, kind of flagged me down and got in the car and said, listen, you can't just drive the way you came. You may get stopped by some people who saw you taking all those pictures, and, they don't know you, and they heard you speak, and you sound like a northerner, and you might have a problem. So I'm going to take you out of town where they won't expect you to leave from. And so he did. And he drove, got me about 15 miles out of town. He goes, I live over in that neck of the woods. That next road there, just stop, let me off, and I can walk home. And he did. And so, and basically, he probably saved my life, But years later, I realized, when I went back to New York City, I realized that High Point, North Carolina was, because it was a union, it was the furniture capital of the world. They had the Furniture Mart, and they still do. They had big furniture shows there. And all the workers there were union, whereas North Carolina was not a union shop. So the black guys and the white guys who worked in those factories got paid the same thing. And so when they would leave, they had 3 shifts. And when they would leave, go home, they all walk out to the parking lot and get into the same Buick car and drive home. And they get at the end of the major avenue. Black guys would go this way, white guys would go that way. And then when you went and looked at their neighborhoods, their houses, actually the black people had nicer houses because they actually work harder, had more expertise, did other things, had a little more fluent money, and they had their own economy, right? That's when I realized Black America, segregated America, the black people had money because their money was focused into the black community. And in 64, 65, 66, 67, all of those civil rights laws that were passed, which all they did was take the black money out of the black neighborhoods, right? And so I've had this amazing little carousel ride of a life, that has given me insights that most people, because like I said, I don't believe in anything and I don't disbelieve in anything. I don't diss people. If they believe in something, I don't make fun of them, call them stupid. I don't basket of deplorables. No, I don't judge anybody. I try to make contact with them, right? And I'm a stranger in a strange land. I'm like coming from a place where, I'm the alien trying to talk to the natives, right? And so that movie, that TV series Utopia was quite interesting, and because they had two different points of view: dystopian point of view, utopian point of view, and the weirdness, the supernatural in between, and that's the world we're kind of experiencing, right? And so what I'm watching on all these platforms, and I'm kind of binging, is their point of view is nothing like what it was just 5 years ago. Now there were shows like Fringe, and the X-Files, and a number of shows that were individually very interesting, that were trying to look at J.J. Abrams did a lot of interesting shows. Fringe was a really interesting show, and about fringe science and fringe reality, and that's where we are right now. And so we are going through a very interesting thing, and the powers that be are trying to do their very best to hold on to the power to freak out the general public, so they will allow themselves to become more of a slave than they are now. And yet, it doesn't seem to work. That is the most interesting thing about humans, is that you can, I was a social scientist. I was a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. I looked at the big picture, the threads, you name it. And the thing I was very good at realizing was that no matter how homogenized the social structure is manufactured to be through media and economics and education, humans never do what you expect them to do. And that's the really interesting thing. Now, the sad thing is that the individual human can and normally does get themselves stuck into a lifestyle that is self-destructive and not very good at expanding their consciousness or enabling them to be better and better. My whole life, my major raison d'etre in my life was to be better, to do better, right? Because I had all these experiences that could have really damaged me, but didn't. They made me better, gave me an outlook to be more understanding, more empathetic, more open-minded, more looking at every angle, right? And our society, our culture, because it's this crony capitalism. It's not even capitalism. It's not even communism is state capitalism. It's not even that. It's this crony capitalism. This 1/10 of 1% run control everything, right? And everyone else gets a smaller and smaller and smaller slice of the pie. Anyway, so here we are. It's about an hour and 23 minutes. Only one person is on there. It's only two. Now there's 0 buddies there. And I'm glad for all you who, Jessica Davenport, thank you for being part of it. And MJ, thank you for being part of it. And I'm always here for you. And anybody who wants to communicate with me personally, just go to the dudeawake42 at Gmail, the dudeawake42 at Gmail. And if you want to send anything to my, my PayPal, they'll ask you what the email address, and that's the dudeawake42 at Gmail. And it's right now, for the next 10 days, I really have not that much money, just, so that's why I'm not going anywhere. And I have enough food in the fridge, and I'll eat it before it starts to rot. And just playing with the animals and taking care of the house and not going anywhere. And because I have no real money to put gas in the car or do anything, I'm just kind of enjoying binge watching on the screen and cooking and cleaning and fixing things. So that's what I've been doing and playing with the dog and just enjoying life. Right? And that's what life should be, enjoyed. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. I'll talk to you later.